Rock on. So everybody, welcome back to the Meeting Force. Today I have with me Bro Troy, or correction, Bro Troy from the Bro Code. And Troy has a very interesting outlook in a lot of other ways. And so we look forward to looking at over his 20 years of experience in customer service, sales, management, leadership development, inspirational speaking, relationship building, and as he aspires to inspire all that cross his path. He is a proven success coach and mentor for children and for parents. He provides a strategic plan of success to bring the best out of people, no matter where they are. And he's had to, he's had multiple times, multiple pleasures uh, of correction. He's had the pleasure of training and facilitating large and small groups, educating students, parents, and teachers in resiliency, mindset, and cultural competence, purpose, self awareness, and weight loss transformation and physical fitness. So, without any further ado, let's welcome Bro Troy to the show. Oh,
what up, Jim?
How's it going, man?
Man? You official bro now. You bro Jim. What's happening, man? Glad to be here.
Okay, let me change my name then. Okay.
Hey man, good to see you, man. Laughter's food for the soul, brother. We should all strive to eat more.
It is. Well, hey, welcome to the Meeting Forge, and here we're gonna kind of examine some of your life so far and what's salient to you right now. And we'll start diving into the symbology through the hammer, the pin, the sword, and the crown.
Yeah.
Or the hammer, sword, pin, and crown. And then we'll summarize, and you get to have some final words at the very end of this. Because on my show, my guests have the final words. I don't.
Okay.
So, well, the first thing I'd like to start off with, Troy, is who is Troy and where does he come from, and then we'll start this process.
Oh man, I hope we got enough time for it. So Troy Jermaine Johnson started off in a little town called Sayreville, New Jersey. It's probably about 20 minutes outside of New Brunswick, New Jersey, where Rutgers University is at. Single mom, grandparents played a huge role in my upbringing. That's who I saw early on in life. It was my grandfather. He was a VP or a manager higher up in Kmart, right? I'm dating myself now, bro Jim. But my grandmother worked at DuPont. And man, they kept me in junior everything. I grew up in a small church. Grandmother made sure that I stayed in church. I was in junior everything, man. Junior usher boy, junior choir. If it had a junior on it, Bro Jim, she definitely had me in it. My grandfather was a trustee. I watched him as a businessman perform and work on cars, grow gardens. He was a man's man. He was a working man. There was always something to do. There was never a time to rest. 12, I moved from Jersey and living with my mom. She had got a budding career in Atlanta. That's when Bank of America started moving to Atlanta. Back then, was that about 92, 93. And kind of like a culture shock, man. Went from that suburban town to here it is, Chocolate City in Decatur, Georgia. And started going to different school systems and being around different populations of people, learning more about myself, growing into my manhood, if you may, kind of smelling myself. I'm about 13, turning into a teenager. Kind of got caught up in whole teenage life and decision making, and from there, didn't go to college. I had options when I got out of high school, chose a government career that allowed me to travel to 5 of the 7 continents. Really learning more about culture, and that the world is so much bigger than Decatur, Georgia. Thankful for that experience. It allowed me to really be exposed to a whole lot. And from there, I started a sales career and met my wife during my sales career. She was my administrator. I actually interviewed her. That's a whole nother story all by itself. And led teams all up and down the East Coast, opened up 3, had a team of 40 in my early 20s or mid 20s that were following through Greenville, South Carolina, Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and Columbia, South Carolina. And you know, that taught me a whole lot more about teaching, training, motivating, interviewing, and just being a people person, like really learning more about people and leadership. It taught me a little bit more about myself and, really what it takes to be that chameleon or to be that head of leadership, right? And I'm learning how to deal with different individuals, personalities, so on and so forth. And I was going door to door. So even more of that rhino mentality and taking those, really learning how to fine tune a goal and chasing that regardless of what's going on around you or the adversities. That built that muscle. That really did. That door to door built that muscle. Let that go due to circumstances and really consistently went back to the government job, used that as a 7-year plan to really catapult into marriage. Again, I know my wife over 20 years, but we've been married, it'll be 10 in July. And started doing purpose-driven work, and through marriage, it uncovered another lens of me as a man and also as a man of God. And I really started to understand my why, my purpose, why I'm here, and my thumbprint on earth. And I've been working diligently in that. It'll be 5 years this June. That has given us the opportunity to expand all across the RDU and expose youth ages 7 to 17, more focused on young men, using love, consistency, opportunity, exposure as a superpower to really bring out the best in them through our nonprofit of Y4C.
That was a great rundown. And so now I get to ask a few diving in questions. So I guess what was a major lesson first that you learned from your mother?
Mhm.
Because I mean, you said you're heavily involved. I mean, she pretty much kept you involved in the church, and what was some lessons from that?
Yeah, that was my grandma. So grandma was a
Oh,
praying
grandma,
grandma.
sorry.
Yeah, big mamas are missing right now, bro, Jim. My mother played a huge role in my life too, especially as a single mom and taking on that, I dare to say, burden, right? That oftentimes we ain't got it together, and a lot of those traumas pour down to our children because we just haven't dealt with them. And I'm no different.
Yeah.
But yes, to your point, man, my grandmother, she wore out knee pads about this right here, bro, Jim. Yes, she did. I should have took stock in them a long time ago, but I didn't. But she created the fundamentals and the seeds. My the Bible says, "With loving kindness have I drawn thee," and that was the first reflection of that. I got that reflection from my grandmother. She was indeed the nurturer, the one that would really love on you. She wasn't. My grandfather was the disciplinary, but my grandmother never met a stranger. And I think that was probably one of the biggest, if you want to say, aha moments or seeds of love that she planted in me, is really having a love for people. My grandmother never met a stranger. A lot of those things don't mean a whole lot at 12 or 13 because she just old, right? And it's like, hey, I love my grandmother. She makes cakes and pies and she kisses me and all that good stuff. But that old wisdom really hits a little different once you've had lived experience. And for me, if I can really resonate on some of the life lessons, many of them, never met a stranger, man. Treating people as if they're family, love being a major principle, and understanding that it's an action word. So yeah, man, I would say never met a stranger, man. Yeah.
I like that. Love is an action word
Yeah.
in more ways than one. I agree with you. And then kind of moving forward, and maybe I misheard you. You said your father was heavily involved in managing and
My
in
grandfather, yeah,
your
my
grandfather.
grandfather, yeah, he
Sorry,
lived to
sorry
be
for that.
101. Yeah, yeah.
Your grandfather was heavily involved with managing and leading companies and stuff like that. And what was some of his impacts on you?
Wonderful, man. One of the lenses that really sparked me to do the mission-driven work that we're doing now with our nonprofit Y4C is the life lessons of my grandfather. Behind me, you see a canvas, which is one of our barbershop talks, and that was birthed from him. So we know that. So let me give you a backstory. So my grandfather was very prideful about being first in line at the barbershop. So much so that it was standard that every other Saturday, every 2 weeks, we went to Mr. Eddie's barbershop in New Brunswick, New Jersey. Mr. Eddie opened up at 7 a.m. and we had to be in the parking lot at 5 a.m. because he had to be first. Now, as a 10-year-old, 11-year-old, 12-year-old kid, that sucked. Like, why are we waking up that early on a Saturday morning? I need cereal and cartoons. I could care less about this haircut. But the life lessons that were learned at the barbershop, if I could set the stage, if I could paint the picture for you, bro, Jim, Mr. Eddie, it was clean cut. He looked like Mr. Clean. He had a mustache, and he always had a clean white T-shirt on, a patent leather black belt, patent leather shoes, and white pants. He had one of those, I can't remember the name of it, but those hydraulic pump chairs that took an hour to pump up. Like, this thing was heavy. He never moved that thing, right? But it was the first place, bro, Jim, that for obedience and sacrifice, I earned candy and money. If I sat still, I got a lollipop. And if I showed some work ethic and I swept up some hair, I got 50 cents to a buck. And back in 92 or in the 90s, the early 90s, that dollar went straight to Krauser's, which is a corner store right down the street from Mr. Eddie's barbershop. And I got me a honey bun and some soda, man. So it was those life lessons. Like, it meant nothing to me, Jim, at 10, 11, 12. I thought he was just a mean, old, honorary old man. Like, he just loved to whoop my behind and discipline me. But what he was really doing was planting those seeds of work ethic, planting those seeds of preparation and understanding that there's always something to do, and I really realized that now. He was really equipping me and setting me up for success now.
That's pretty awesome and beautiful in its own right.
Yeah.
Even though despite the pain of the moment, uh,
Yeah.
that a young mind doesn't always understand.
Yeah.
And even if looking back fondly on it, we can still pull out important lessons to that. And so kind of, develop this picture, paint this picture of Bro Troy a little bit more, um, you sir are the artist. Uh, you kind of touched on growing into your manhood and becoming a man after moving down to Decatur, Georgia. What was a major experience that you had there that resonates with you today?
Yeah, that was a culture shock, Jim. It really was, bro. We Just to give you a backstory, in Jersey, man, we grew up in a neighborhood called Sherwood Forest. We were the only Black family in the neighborhood. So this day and age, diversity and inclusion is a checkbox. People actually have to watch videos to figure that out. That was a lifestyle for me. I was Lisa Black from Saved by the Bell. Like, I grew up that way. And it was normal. It was nothing for me to converse, have conversation, whatever the case may be. I say all that to say this: once moving from Sherwood Forest, Perth Amboy, New Jersey, Sayreville, New Jersey, down to Decatur, Georgia, it was totally different. It was a dynamic that I had. It was almost I was introduced to my Blackness. Like, we're in the middle of Decatur, Georgia, right outside of Atlanta. We're in the '90s, and music and that Atlanta vibe is taking over. Like, I was exposed. It was like drinking out of a fire hose. It really was, based on what I grew up in New Jersey. I think one of the biggest things that really helped me is in growing through that is learning how to stand out instead of trying to fit in. That it was a weird space for me, not just as a kid because I'm growing into my teenage years, but just a whole new environment. And be honest with you, they knew that I wasn't from there. Like, you could hear it. You can hear it in my swag, my lingo, the way I dress. And it really helped me to create an identity, start to walk in who I was and be comfortable with that. I think one of the superpowers that I believe that I was granted with, and we try to encourage through the children that we serve today, is being comfortable in your own skin. I believe that self-awareness is one of the greatest gifts there is, because it now devalues trying to impress or make sure that you have validation from others. It means less to you. And I think at a young age, I was going through being fat. I used to be huge. That was one of my testimonies. One of my meta testimonies, man, was I was a big boy, Jim, and working through my size as well as a new environment and really kind of getting into my own. I'm thankful that that confidence and that self-esteem, which many kids don't have, I was equipped with. I also had good people around me. When I came down there, I was able to connect with a good friend source and individuals that were similar to myself, kind of migrating to Atlanta and weren't from there. And I'm thankful for that. I look back on it now, though I made some poor choices, and I think we all have. I've definitely learned and been built from such. Um, I'm glad that I had that support system. I'm glad that I was able to kind of start to develop into my own person and appreciate who I was as a kid.
So that's also that is one of the things that I kind of dialed in on is the idea of standing out versus fitting in, and walking within your own identity, and in your own skin, and being comfortable in that. It's not an easy skill sometimes. Actually, most of the times it's not, because I mean, everybody has that confidence type of issue, that little voice in the back of their head, the good one and the bad one. Uh, from growing into a story about moving to Decatur,
Mhm.
and then into um, traveling with government work and stuff like that to multiple countries. Was that the same kind of culture shock, or like how did that influence you, and how did that leave a lasting impact?
Oh man, that's a great question, Jim. So traveling the world allows people to see things from a different perspective. It allows you to become cultured. In that space, I was huge. And what I mean by that, remember, weight loss is part of my testimony. At the time, I was over 400 pounds. Working in this government job, you're on merchant vessels that are manned 80-20, 80% civilian, 20% Navy, and that's just for communications and navigation. There was three departments: deck department, engine department, supply department. I worked in the deck department. Prior to children, my vision and goal was to become a captain of one of these merchant vessels and just travel the world for the rest of my life, using pay or a job to do that. Dopest place I've ever been, Dubai. Uh, uh, Second, well, I don't know. This one's tough. Tied for second is Singapore and Thailand. Um, if I had to give one above the other, and it's only because of technology, I would say Singapore. But Thailand is an adult playland. However far your mind and money can go, you can go. Put it that way. So, anyway, with that being said, yeah, Dubai is dopest, where I got the chain from.
Mhm.
I was on the helm, so I have a helm as my emblem,
Nice.
and um, I was the helmsman for UNREPS, which is underway replenishment. So basically, if I could paint the picture, two ships come alongside, we tension a cable, and then we send pallets back and forth. You got a helo team on the back that's dropping pallets from each
Mhm.
stern. Um, and it's my job to make sure I keep the ship straight. And whatever course we're running, that's what I had to do. So it was something we took great pride in it, man. And it allowed me to go to some really dope places. It allowed me to gain some really awesome experiences. But the most humbling place, to answer your question, life-changing place that I went to was Djibouti, Africa. And here's why. Um, One, I'd never been there, and that was the end of my tour. So on these particular merchant vessels, you had to do a tour of duty of at least 4 months. You could do more than that if you want to, but my tour of duty was up. I think I had done about 7 months. I earned the money that I wanted to earn, and I was ready to go home. So my relief was supposed to come in Djibouti, Africa. So we pull up in Djibouti, Africa. I'm huge now. Remember, I'm over 400 pounds. I'll never forget this, Jim. It's a third world country. There's a base there as well. They call it the Green Mile, if I'm not mistaken. It's like really hot. It's really close to the equator. So
Mhm.
anyway, I remember getting off the boat and they thronged me. Like they wouldn't let me carry my bags. They kept calling me Fat Man, and it didn't take me long to figure out, just asking some questions, that they weren't making fun of me. That was a form of endearment. They equated my girth with wealth. They figured, man, if he's that fat, he must eat well, and if he eats well, he must have money. And it was a very interesting 3 days. Like I stayed there 3 days before I left, and I was 25. Like I have a clue. I'm 25-year-old kid, fresh from Decatur, Georgia, man. I didn't have a clue, bro. But it was so humbling. And then on the way home, I remember riding home, or not home, on the way to the airport in Djibouti, Africa. We're in this Isuzu Trooper, old broke down Isuzu Trooper. There's no windows in it. It has plexiglass. I remember riding to the airport, seeing camels, goats, some of the things that you see on TV with the images that they use for kids to ask for money. Like, I'm actually in the midst of this. I'm actually looking at houses with tin roofs on it. But the thing that really got me, Jim, was it rained for those 3 days that I was there heavily. And on the way home, it rained so much that it accumulated a huge body of water, almost pond-like, if you may, small pond-like. Well, on the left side of the pond, I saw chickens, goats, any type of animal, dogs, strays, whatever the case may be, drinking the water, defecating in the water, urinating in the water. And then on the right side of the pond, kids playing like it was nothing. Like, this was the YMCA, and they're at a huge pool, and just, I mean, not a care in the world. I mean, had no issue with what was going on the left side of the pool of the pond, man. And it really blew my mind, because oftentimes, I know I do it. I complain because the Wi-Fi is out. I complain because, hey man, the lights is out. Are you serious? And it was just a humbling experience. It really was. It was in that moment. It was like, wow. And I share that experience very often because it really speaks volume of less is more. We've all heard the story of the kid with and painting with the boo-boo, and he said, "Why are you digging underneath it?" Because underneath is something that has to be a pony, right? So that optimism, that looking at the bright side. But I have to say that that experience alone was something that I'll never forget.
Nice. That is, I have always enjoyed traveling, and I haven't been to Thailand,
Mm,
but I have been to Cambodia.
yeah, walking street. Yeah.
And Southeast Asia is
Yes.
pretty interesting, to say the
Yeah,
least.
absolutely. That's a great word to use. I could think of others, but we'll leave it at that.
Yeah,
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 absolutely.
it's interesting, and appreciate you sharing that story.
Hmm.
And we'll go ahead and transition into the hammer, as I think we start leaning into one of the most important materials possible.
Hmm.
All right, so hammer phase. So what is the hammer, right? This is Thor's hammer. It's right even above me. It's on this side actually. Anyway,
Excellent.
so the hammer is essentially, we're using to forge our sword, or who we are, what we become eventually, or how there are many versions of who we become.
Hmm.
And with that, we're pulling in influence. So think of like every single time a blacksmith or someone is forging a sword, and every single time they reach up, they come down. And let's just say every single time Thor does this, right? He harnesses lightning, and that's like it's like
Hmm.
a divine influence.
Hmm.
And so we're going to kind of use some of that as symbology, and some of that that imagery
Hmm.
to help understand the key things we bring together in the forging process, into how we make who we are today.
Hmm.
And one of the things that I kind of want to dial in on is, so you go off into leading teams, you start learning about leadership. And before you start stepping into purpose driven work, which I would like you to elaborate on as well, and here in a little bit, is what was a key mentor during your sales time that you were leading teams that really helped influence you to refine your leadership style?
That's a good one. There's a many people I could talk about, but I have to be honest with you. I think one of the key pieces that helped build me as a leader is being okay with failure, like that. Taking no's. Like, I have to remember my first exposure to leadership was door to door sales. Like, it was in the thick of it. It wasn't on the phone. So, my ability to, outside of the mentors that I had was a young man by the name of Guy Megan's, one of the only cats I could say, bro, Jim, that I was 18 when I started that. I went right out of high school into sales. I didn't go to college. I went from there to start doing the government work. So my first exposure outside of high school was door-to-door sales. So I have to say that, one, I got very used to being uncomfortable at an early age. So I think, and oftentimes, being living in a space of feeling comfortable and being uncomfortable is almost as valuable as, if not more, than that self-awareness piece that we talked about. And I think about it and I look back at it now that I was traveling in those spaces at such a young age. I didn't know that was all part of defining and equipping what I'm doing now,
Mhm.
right? But yeah, I have to say, if I go back outside of people, right, and we can name people all day, I think it really was the space of learning how to take a no. And I was
Mhm.
doing it consistently, right? This is something I did every day and day out, and then learning to be uncomfortable. Being in situations where critical thinking wasn't an option, it was a must. Like, we need to be quick, and we need to be quickly, and my mind was doing that at such a young age, and I think that's such a gift now with the service driven work that we do with kids, when that picture or that aha moment can be uncovered at such a young age. To me, that creates an opportunity for them to be light years ahead of their peers.
I agree. Agree. And so I'm going to kind of broaden the aperture here just a little bit. And I just kind of want to push and see if there is just one person in your professional development and stuff like that, you're in life development too, just in general, in the recent, we'll say 10 years or so,
Yeah.
that has really been extremely influential and has helped mentor you and helped align you and help realize what your purpose is.
Yeah. Obviously, early on, it was my grandfather. He died last year at
Mhm.
101. He lived a very long and fulfilling life. And the beautiful thing about him is he was truly my mentor up until 6 months before he died. And the reason I say that is because he still had his right mind. He was still new. He still had the briefcase where he keeps all the bills and does every month. It was
Mhm.
really kind of a wow. Outside of him, with the purpose driven work that I do now, earlier on in marriage, probably about year one, I was really challenged at home to move more consistently in a space of being the chief priest, protector, and provider of my home. I was challenged to really stand in that piece of being the leader, not just in the community, but it started right in my own crib, right in my own home, Jim. And as somebody that has always taken on challenges, as somebody who is not scared or afraid of adversity, I really took that to heart, and that came in the form of me, getting married. It'll be 10 years this June. So in that piece, I met a man by the name of Bishop Ralph Donnie Graves. In that challenge, we found a church home, became committed in that church home, and it was in that space that a gap for me was filled. Early on, one of the things that I struggled with, especially as a kid, um, was the why my parents weren't together. Like, a piece of my why is that my parents were never married, and at 12 we never had conversations like that. It was kind of like they just understood. I went to go see Pop sometimes in the summertime, but that didn't happen until I was a teenager. So there was a 13-year gap that I had questions and never had the courage to ask, but never was confronted with the conversation. So it left a lot of things unsaid, and it created a lot of fear, discouragement, anxiety in me, and it just continued to carry on into every chapter of my life. And because of that, I really shied away from a whole lot of relationships with men as it pertains to mentorship. I had homies all day, but those were oftentimes surface relationships. There wasn't really what's happening, man. Let's what's going on with you? Let's
Mhm.
talk to me, and I found that, here it is now. I'm 31, 32 years old. I've taken on a blended family. I've got a wife and 3 kids now. And at one time, it was just, I was still trying to figure me out, nonetheless, trying to take on the responsibility of being the chief priest, protector, and provider of a home, being a leader of a home. It was heavy. And it was in that space that I met Bishop Graves. And um, again, we said this earlier, with loving kindness have I drawn thee. I saw that in him. The same reflections that I saw in my grandmother, I now saw in a man, not just in a man, but in a man of God. And it was different for me. Like it was like a moth to a flame. It was almost like a drawing thing. And I didn't buck it. I didn't, I really wanted to receive it. And with that came a whole lot more of growing in me, not just as a
Mhm.
man, but also respecting, honoring, acknowledging, and receiving the of God part, and how that adds value to me, how that always encourages and uplifts and never takes anything away. So he helped me see the lens of what it means to have the heart of a servant. He helped me to embrace grace. Most importantly, grace for self, and then of course acknowledging that it was given, so that way it can be freely given to others. So Bishop Ralph Donnie Graves, man, he has helped in my marriage and helped in me in a position as a man and also as a man of God. I served in that capacity for 8 years. He spoke into my life, what I'm doing now, about 2 years in. And of course, I laughed at him. Here we are, 5 years into that prophecy, and everything that he said is continuing to manifest. And the best is yet to come, bro. So, yes, when it comes to I was in a position though, Jim, that I think the biggest part of that is that I'd been through enough BS that I was willing to be able to receive that. It was a appointed time, and had I been exposed to that too earlier, it wouldn't have been received, or it wouldn't really have taken root. But it was all divine, man. I truly believe that took up almost the whole chapters of my 30s. So from 32 to about 40, I served in that capacity, and even so much so outside of myself, my wife served him as she graduated from Winston-Salem State with a degree in nursing.
Mm.
So I served as his armor bearer, and she served as his personal nurse. So it was nothing for us to be over there in wee hours of the night. Like, it was normal for, always to be in that capacity. So whether it was services in the upper room and behind closed doors and executive meetings, or driving, or just serving the people, I had uh, an inside view of, of that lens, and that added value to me in so many different layers.
Yeah, it's really interesting what people can bring out in us, and I liked how you kind of use prophecy there, because certain people I think can find those patterns in people and certain behaviors, but like, you're leaning into this. You better watch out.
Yeah.
This is coming.
Mm.
Um, I mean, good and bad ways.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I guess as we kind of start rounding out
Mm.
the hammer here, you're I kind of want to touch on your weight loss journey here as well, because I think that's like a hammer. Like, I mean, you're molding yourself there. Like, that's a great, like, one-to-one example almost. And so uh I guess what clicked, and how did you start that process? Was grace involved in this process, and so on and so forth?
Yeah, great question. So first, we got to start an understanding. People see me as I am now. I used to be twice this size, right? But my attitude, my enthusiasm towards life, my self-esteem, just the same. I was just huge, right? I was the overweight lover, Jim. So with that being
Nothing wrong with
said,
that.
yeah, indeed. With that being said, what really clicked for me is I wanted to live life differently. Remember, I've always been the drastic kid, right? I've always learned the hard way. I've always been the rebel without a cause. I've always been the adventurous type. I've always been the spontaneous kid. And my daughter was born. So Look, man, we don't know the minute nor the hour. Death is life's common denominator. It's gonna come for all of us, right? We don't know when that is, but I don't seek after that. What I seek is to live life as in its fullness, and when that comes, it does. Um, Living in that space and wanting to live life differently, having a new lease on life, is what pushed me. So I started looking into gastric bypass surgery. I knew I was fatter than fat, man. I looked into the sleeve. I looked into all of um, those potential surgeries for weight loss, and I came to the conclusion that, I wrote down on paper that I wanted to be under 200 pounds. And after I had the surgery back in 2011, I got married in 2012. Yeah. So I had the surgery in 2011. So back then, what advice I got was to go for the full-blown, gastric bypass, turn your stomach from that to that, right? And now you're forced to not be able to eat because you get full quicker. This was right around the cusp when they were going away from staples into laser. There was concern of the whole staples in the stomach and all that good stuff, man. But anyway, long the short, man, I did it. I was in Augusta, Georgia. This was right before I got married. This is where I knew that this was the one as far as my wife. My son just turned 16, so he was about 7 then. Right, so it was 10 years. I just celebrated 10-year fativersary in this past August, doing the surgery. So that they never left the hospital. I was there for 3 days, and they never left, man. She was by my side the whole time. I was determined, to get it, to make it happen. I brought a lot of help on myself, Jim. You got to understand, mentally, I was still fat. Just because you have the surgery, it doesn't mean it's a genie. The next day, you're not what you want, right? There definitely is work in progress. So people could say what they want to. There's 50% of people gain their weight back. 50% of people have the rooster neck, right? So there's work that has to be done in this too, not just operation. I say all that because the first year after, I brought a lot of hell on myself. I didn't listen. I didn't follow the plan of the doctor. I smelled pepperoni and I wanted it. I still had a taste for fried chicken, cheese, steak, pound cake, and everything in between. Sweets are my weak point. And mentally, I was still fat. Remember, I lived this life for almost 31 years. Now, all of a sudden, I had to change everything that I was doing to get to this goal. And I had dumping syndrome. I had spots on my tongue. There was a time, Jim, that the only thing that I could eat was cold watermelon because it felt good going down. It was water-based. I remember being in the fetal position in the bed and just crying out, just, "Oh God, just take me." I didn't sign up for this. I really didn't. There has to be a better way. And that 5'0" companion now, my wife, my helpmate, was my biggest soundboard. She wouldn't let me feel sorry for myself. She was like, "Yo, you got to get up, do something. You can't just sit here." And that really started the journey, man. I got up, started walking. I've always been an extremist, so I didn't want to go to Planet Fitness. So I started studying Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and Muay Thai kickboxing. I started fine-tuning my body through discipline and fighting. And I was doing it 6 days a week, 2 hours. I would put gloves on and box and really work my body. Muay Thai works, your whole body is a weapon, so you're using every part of your body as a tool. I do that for an hour, then I go put a gi on and roll around and choke people out. It was invigorating. It helped fine tune my body like none other. I got down to 195, had put on my bucket list to do an amateur MMA fight, and God knew better. Blew my knee out and had 2 cups of fluid drained off of my knee, stopped all that. But it got me down to what my goal was. And I just continued to have a thirst and love for physical activity since then.
That is awesome. And that's a great story in more ways than one. I love how when we, during these interviews and stuff like that, we can start to see the multiple plot lines kind of come together in different points and stuff like that. And I think this is kind of one of them. And so we're going to transition into the sword. You're good if you need to take a big old swig.
Oh yeah, yeah. You gotta wet my whistle.
Okay, so I really like this because it's really interesting. And I don't normally do it this way, but I think that this works for this interview. So we've arrived now at the sword, and I think we've kind of seen this forging process over your life so far based off your life story, and then the hammer phase, and like multiple processes coming together. There's a lot of, I think, already implicitly and explicitly hard things that you had to overcome. And as you're molding and shaping this sense of embodiment, this thing that you carry by your side, what purpose, like how was that purpose revealed to you?
Mm. That's a good one, man. Purpose is like the biggest question people have. Like, what's my why? Like, why am I here?
Yeah.
Why am I taking up space on Earth? Like, it's got to be something bigger than this. This can't be it. And for me, it was a culmination of things. You know, as I'm walking through my life, we can see that how different pieces of it have come together, almost like Voltron, to create where I am now, but continuing evolving. Like I don't have it all together, but those pieces have created that platform for me to walk in that purpose. So great question. Purpose is found through pain or inspiration. Things that rub you the wrong way, and you find a gap, it irritates you. Like, man, I wish this would, or that shouldn't be like that, or man, I know this could be done better. Or someone is near and dear and close to you that exposes you to something that maybe earlier on meant nothing, but because you keep seeing it over and over and over and over again, it just kind of attaches yourself to it. Well, Jim, it was crazy because both of those things happened to me.
I can see it.
You know what I mean? Like my grandfather lived to be 101. Like this is the reflection of a Black male that I had the privilege to have to me. Like you know, I as again at 12, 15, it meant nothing. But you look back now, especially with the work that I'm doing now, I'm like those things were always close to me. That exposure was always in front of me. I never had to look far to see a reflection of something that was positive, a reflection that was something that was progressive, a reflection of something that was kind and loving. It was, I grew up in it. So that's where the inspiration part comes in. The pain part, you know, hey man, I'm still working through some of those voids because I want to be better, not bitter. You know, me and my dad, I talked to him yesterday. We have very candid conversations, and we've had those tough conversations because I wanted to know why. I wanted to fill that void with a sense of endearment and betterment, and not allowing that to fuel anger inside of me. I've had an opportunity to now take some of that pain or some of those things that did rub me the wrong way because they were never reflected on and unpacked, if you may, to now readily recognize that pain in a child, to recognize that hurt or that reflection and understand, not to belittle, to judge, but to really come alongside and say, okay, how can we make this better? You know, what is it that we could take away from this that can make us a better person? And do it with a sense of genuineness, right? A sense of purpose and through lived experience. So, you know, for me, it also hit home. So purpose came to me because it was on my front door. Outside of the pain that I'm still reflecting on and working through and unpacking of my past, you know, as a progressive man, you know, as a perpetual person. My son, I mentioned him earlier. He turned 16 earlier this month. Real loving kid, man. Wouldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight, Jim. You know, it's really what the world is missing, bro. Like he's 16. I'm not tall, but he's taller than me. But he'll sit in your lap and hug you all day, man. Like this kid is really a reflection of love, and something that should transcend on this earth a little bit more. But he was being bullied. He was being picked on. He was being kind of transfer of energy. And you know, he was the path of least resistance to a child during elementary school. Anyway, long or the short, that was a problem that I had to solve because Mama Bear was like, do something or I will. And I didn't want the I will, Jim. You know, we didn't even want to take it that far. So honestly, Jim, yeah, you see shaking your head, right? So with that being said, man, there's not much a big black man can do at the bus stop, right? Because my son still had to go to school. So I found myself at a lunch table and I allowed discernment to lead me. I went to lunch, my son's lunch, and started talking about anime and cartoons and hurt people hurt people. I instantly figured out who the kid was without him telling me. And I just came a little closer, man. I loved on the kid. You know, I really spoke to his heart and I figured out his why, you know, and it was a transfer of energy for him too. Anyway, I mended that relationship, man. I used biscuits and chicken from a local eatery. They're not paying me enough to say their name. So nonetheless, with that being said, that relationship was solved. And the administration, the teachers were like, hey, what's going on here? How can we do this more? I was like, hey, I can't keep buying chicken and biscuits. That's not how this works. But hey, use something tangible. Let's use reading. So I'll come read to the kids. You know, I'll come to the same class. I'll take 20 minutes. I'll bring 2 other people with me and we'll make an hour session out of it. So that's where we saw outcomes, where their levels either increased, stayed the same, whether that be through the reading and behavioral, right? So from there, I was like, man, what else can we do? And that's how it was birthed, man. It was birthed from solving a relationship with me personally, from my past, my son. And I'll never forget his words. He was like, man, thank you, Daddy. And then when we first started, it just took off. And he would come to me weeks later and was like, yo, I have friends now, Dad. I appreciate that. So yeah, it was the pain from my past, remember, it doesn't affect you till it affects you. So it was hitting home with me, and then it was spoken on my life, you know, and serving in the church. It was nothing for me to be in the quarters of the bishop. You know, we're talking about get ready to serve the people, looking up scripture, reading it back, reflecting on it. You know, what does that mean to you? You know, really sharing and chewing the fat, and you know, it being a fair exchange. And yeah, I remember coming out and we were getting ready to go into the sanctuary. He just turned around and instantly gave me what God gave him as it pertains to what I'm doing now. And he turned back around and went and kept on going. I'm just standing there looking. And yeah, it was a combination of those 3 things. And from there, you know, I just I got the keys to the church. It took about $1,500, prayed on it. The church is in the middle of a community that has plenty of children in it. At the time, I was teaching Sunday school. We fancy word we use for school and ministry, and the high school kids were graduating, so I didn't have a class. You know, my class was going to college, and you know, I was really given a challenge by Bishop Graves to go get more kids, and from there, that kind of unctioned and pushed, and it turned into, you know, mentoring program using character development, sports for physical activity because of my weight loss journey, and then positive popular conversation over a meal. We just took that equation, started in the church, and just put it into every program that we do, and started back in 2017, and now have built that out into amazing work all around the RDU area, with the YMCA, with every law enforcement unit in the RDU area and surrounding areas, sheriff department, social services, foster care, and the list goes on. You know, we're definitely 25 different barbershops through positive popular conversation in the barbershop to bridge the gap between law enforcement and our brown and black kids, man, making sure that the first time that they see an officer isn't on the side of the road at 2 a.m. And really helping to build relationships through conversation.
I like how all of a sudden it goes back to the barbershop, the significant emotional events as a young kid, getting there early, and now that is the place where people can resolve conflict or get to know people, and I really think that's awesome. And it's just there's a bunch of different things there that I'm trying to like kind of find the underlying story there, right? And let me know if I'm off here, but there's like you said something earlier about grace and being inspired in pain, and like one, the only way you can have grace is to actually, you know, from a religious aspect, we have to understand that it comes freely, right?
Sure.
But it's also in our own pain
Mm,
that we're able to see that and use that as not like a measuring stick. Oh, my pain is more than yours. It's just because all
mm,
pain is equal. I mean, we're able to reach and to have that conversation with, the kid, like your son's bully, and kind of reach deeply into that transfer there. So it's not like it's exactly in a way where how I imagine the sword, right?
yeah.
It's not a it's not a weapon
Mm,
to hang on, I don't know. It's not a weapon by which you swing wildly and cut and slay people with and all other fun stuff. It's an embodiment of yourself, hopefully.
mm,
And then from there, it is if you do it right, I don't think you really ever have to really pull it out. Or if
mm.
you do pull it out, you're pulling it out for a particular reason. And it's not to be aggressive with
Sure.
technically. Um, so I appreciate that. And it's really a powerful story all the way around. And it sounds like, excuse me, you're making a lot of progress in a lot of different areas now.
Yeah.
So I hope that sums that. Does that sum that up? Does that sound right to you?
Well, absolutely. And if I'm hearing you correctly, if I can add value to that, man, temperance hasn't always been a high priority. There was a time that the the me of being equipped with being a so-called wordsmith, meaning that being able to use words to articulate myself and get the point across. But I've always I try to lean towards the saying that says, knowledge is knowing what to say, but wisdom is knowing when to say it. So,
Mm.
and that came through lived experience. That always
Oh
wasn't
yeah,
the case,
yeah.
right?
It doesn't come with unearned
Yeah,
experience. That's
that's
the problem.
absolutely
It
right.
has to be earned,
That's
and
absolutely right,
that's the
man.
hard part about it that a young man sometimes just doesn't always understand,
But I'm
or a
appreciative
young
of.
person.
I'm thankful that I'm in a space to appreciate it more. I'm thankful that I'm in a space that I can recognize its importance. And
Mhm.
words matter. Like we say that all the time. But yes, I've been in a space that I've used them to cut and sever, and it's never fared me well. Um, but again, I think that is the equipping to be able to live and walk in a space to do the work that I'm doing now from a sense of understanding.
Agreed. Agreed. Um, and so that I think is the sword, and I'll just kind of close on the sword for a minute. I think it's funny you jump straight to words, right? And that's
Mm,
important because in the Christian tradition, what we see is the sword is a lot. There's brought up a lot of times. It is a symbol in the Bible, and I think anytime you see the word sword or a reference to a sword, you should be paying
yeah.
attention along with
Mhm.
everything else, right? Uh, pay attention to a lot of things in
Yeah.
that book, and the sword, how it's used, what it is actually like in many ways you can make this translation to being words,
Mhm.
right? The spirit of fire, the Holy
Mhm.
Spirit is words.
Mhm.
It is absolutely that idea. And that it's in Ephesians and so on and so forth. Um, Revelations has some interesting imagery around a sword coming out of someone's mouth.
Mhm.
So uh, it's very interesting that way. And I just wanted to kind of just tell briefly about that because we're going to transition into its cousin, the
Mhm.
pen.
Mhm.
And the pen and the sword are of the same substance, but different in a few different ways.
Yeah.
But they can do almost the exact same things as we've already established.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, real quick, before we dive into, because I like to ask two questions here.
Okay.
It's just two typical questions, and then there's also something interesting here that I think we can kind of briefly address.
Mhm.
Is that as people write and they leave a legacy, and one of the things I would kind of like to say here is like, am I wrong to say that in some cases you're writing on the hearts of young men?
Mm.
or kids and people in the community, not just young men, but
Yeah.
people in the community. Is that a fair assessment?
I like that. I use the word leaving a thumbprint on earth, but I like that one. I think that makes sense. That's another way of saying a lasting impression,
Mm-hmm. Yep.
right?
Yep.
So yeah, I can agree to that. Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. So I want to ask my two questions, and these are doozies apparently. So go ahead and get yourself ready.
Uh-oh.
Oh yeah. All right, Bro Troy. 2,000 years in the future. This is where both these questions will take place. You were no longer a fact.
Mhm.
You are now. It went from a fact to a story to a myth and now a legend. Bro Troy, what is the essence of the idea that you want people to remember you by?
Mm. Essence, man. Whew, that is a doozy. That's a good one. I think legacy kind of tailors or derives through purpose. So that the purpose is the pen that writes out the transcript of legacy. Um, my purpose is to spark creative mindsets in young people. That's my purpose. That's my why. That's the reason for my being. That's my thumbprint on earth. Um, every thumbprint has multiple imprints. So if no one ever remembers my name, uh, I want the reflection of the work that I do, whether it be the logo or the symbolism of Y4C, the message or the platform, the media platform of the Bro Code, to that be a almost like a mini script or a blueprint, almost like breadcrumbs for service-driven work, where people can now go back to digital imprints now, right? You know, we live vicariously through each other on social media, so people can go back to these platforms. People can go back to media platforms and press play, and really use this as something that will continue, like create something that will continue past me, not just on billboards or street signs or on the side of buildings, but almost like a digital imprint of service-driven work. Like, hey, this is a manuscript of ways that we can continue to empower, encourage, and inspire the young and the young at heart. Um, I want to. We were talking the other day, Jim, on how, especially with the storytelling series that we're doing with our media platform, how hey, this can be used now for people to look back on to tell their stories. Like they're doing an interview, somebody's doing a expose on a person, and it's your interview that really sparked that interest in that kid to do whatever that was. If you hadn't created and taken a leap of faith to create this, maybe that was the thing that pushed that person to greatness or whatever the case may be. So I want my life to be a ripple effect, man. I want it to continue. I want people to be able to reflect on it, not from a spirit of perfection, because there's nothing perfect about me, but the ability to take chances, be led by God, and allow Him to take the wheel, man, and allow the world to see, to feel, and acknowledge all of your dopeness, man. So I'm on a journey now. For me, I've experienced so much, Jim, at at a young age. Purpose hits a little different, as the kids would say, especially now that I've found it in a space that I'm really confident in walking in.
That's beautiful, and again, like it's always that like residual message or something like that, right? And so, like, from our Christian perspective, we can say, like, God so loved the earth, He sent His only Son, right? And that's like the essence, almost the essence. Like people go to John 3:16 all the time. I mean, there's a few other ones out there, but That's kind of what I wanted to capture and see if, there's something there that just like, what is the idea that we can boil it down to that can start that path or
Mm.
reflect on that path. And that was a beautiful answer. So thank you for sharing.
Yeah, thank you, man.
Um,
Appreciate you. Yeah.
oh, and we're not done yet.
Well, yeah, there's more.
Remember, 2 questions, both take
That's
place
you
2,000
did
years in the
say
future.
that. You did say that.
So someone is now doing an archaeological dig on your home or wherever that is that's important to you.
Mm,
They can only find one item and one item only.
mm,
What is that one item and why?
mm. I'm a big kid, man, so I'm gonna go with a Nerf gun dart. And here's why. Um, we I'm really big on that in the house. Like we do that all the time. I probably got a arsenal, and me and the kids just go at it. And you'll probably find one, like for really find one outside for real. And I'm being literal, right? But here's the why, man. I'm not scared to shoot my shot. I'm not. I want people to understand that. And I know it's cliche. Michael Jordan says you miss, or Gretzky said it right. You miss all the shots you don't take, right? So Jordan said it too with basketball, right? So I'm thankful that I'm that guy that has never been fearful of failure. It was a lesson, right? And I've always approached it that way. So yeah, Nerf gun dart. I've never been scared to shoot my shot. I am a playful, lovable kid. And even the dynamics of the dart, it's a dart, but it's just a sting. It doesn't really hurt, it's just like pow, and it hits you though, right? You do know it hits you. They've done wonders with these Nerf guns now. But yeah, mine would be a Nerf gun dart, bro. Like, don't let the smooth taste fool you, right? Because just because of what it is doesn't mean it can make less impact. I always say, don't let my meekness be turned into weakness. Don't take my meekness for weakness, right? So some may overlook the Nerf gun dart, but it's impactful. It has power. It just has love in it. It has a soft heart to it. But I always shoot my shot. That would probably be the main reason how that would reflect on my life. And that would probably be the message I would have for any of those that are wondering, what do I do next? How can I start? Well, do just that, start, so don't be scared to shoot your shot, man. Worst that happen is you learn.
I have to ask, have you seen Hamilton?
I have not.
Watch it after this. Take time and watch it, and then text me and be like, I see why you made me watch that now.
My daughter loves it. Like, she sits there and does all of the scenes and everything.
Yeah, well, the pen is directly inspired by Hamilton in more ways than one, in this podcast. So I strongly encourage, if you're gonna go and not wasting a shot, there's a few songs in there you might want to dial in on.
Okay, I love it, man. I appreciate that.
Oh yeah, trust me, it's good, man. It's good. All right, well, that concludes the pen. Let's jump over to the crown.
All right.
The crown. This is, the leaders have, like, kings wear crowns, all that fun stuff. Heavy is the head that wears the crown.
Yeah.
It is the burden of responsibility in more ways than one, and taking on that burden is never easy, right? And I guess what's been the hardest thing, or an example of that little voice in the back of your head saying, "Hey, you can't do this," or something like that, like in that you had to overcome and be confident in your abilities?
Mhm. Um, I would have to say that one of my greatest challenges as a leader, or one of the things that I really had to overcome as a leader, is learning how to strategically and properly delegate, like not trying to do too much, remembering that you're only one man, regardless of the confidence, gumption, fortitude, enthusiasm, and everything in between. Um, a leader's job is to duplicate himself, right? A leader's job is to find the best in others, and mature that, to mold that. And No, though I've always been a people person, people gravitate towards me. Is really identifying how taking the greatness of self, recognizing the greatness in others, and maturing that. And it wasn't really until I took on the acknowledging that feedback was a gift, feedback is a gift, and allowing a male mentor to speak into my life, not from a surface level, but really a more in depth, transparent, and a sense of
Mm.
vulnerability level, that I gained that importance. And once
I
I
see that
gained,
come in circle now.
yeah, and Jim, once I gained that importance, it helped to build and make better the purpose part, because it was an equipping of understanding who I am, what I like and love about me, and then attracting that. And then when it was attracted, I'm in a space now to receive it, and not look at it as wrong or competition or things of that nature. And I'm blessed that I found brothers that were able to come alongside and still come alongside from a genuine place, without competition or ego, but really see a bigger picture, that this thing is way bigger than self. And that really didn't become important to me. It really wasn't something that I sought after until really acknowledging more of my brokenness, like really acknowledging more of why I feel the way that I feel. And that came by really jumping into purpose, like, jumping into the why. Is these kids are a sense of fulfillment for me, just as much as I am or we're a sense of fulfillment for them. Um, and that's why it feels good. Like my grandfather always said, it feels good to do good. And I can honestly say, Jim, that that's true. That's true. So, for me, recognizing feedback is a gift, and then appreciating why it's important to have like-minded people around me to support.
And
I think also it doesn't have to be grandiose either, Jim. Like, oftentimes, especially with kids, they assume leadership with adulthood. Like, oh, I can't be a leader because I'm too young.
oh
So
no.
now we got to go back to David, right? The sheep boy, right? Like, he was overlooked. And I use that story all the time, and it made me think of it with the sword, because Saul was trying to make him carry his stuff, and it wasn't for him. Like, that wasn't your path. That wasn't what you were supposed to dwell. Not that you didn't have one. That just ain't it. And so I think with kids, or just with people, period, even adults get lost in leadership, and understanding that leadership is a lifestyle. It's an activity, just like love is an action word. So is leadership. So I think the
Yeah.
first step in really walking in, creating a space for, is the action part, right? So whether that and it doesn't have to be macro. It can be micro. It can be on the smallest level possible,
Yeah.
but to start, So I think with kids or with adults, find your space of influence. I believe God's greatest gift to man is influence, because with it you have the ability now to walk in leadership in a whole nother level. um and it's a slippery slope, right? Because sometimes influence is not always used for good, and I think that as that is our sense of responsibility, especially as believers. That is our sense of accountability. uh
There we go. Go ahead.
I think it's important that whatever our slice or space of influence is to walk in that and walk heavy. Every day, even if your slice is to be the person that smiles at every person that you makes eye contact with you. Well, live in that. Walk in that. Be bold in that space, and watch that ripple effect grow. Oftentimes, confidence is built through service. Right? It feels good to do good. So if we're I believe that if we're in a space or in a funk, find ways to help people. Go volunteer. Put yourself in a space of vulnerability or a space of being uncomfortable, and watch the gift that it brings you.
I really liked. So this is a hard leadership lesson, no matter where you are, because um that, like, starting small, right?
Mm.
And you're not going to be, like, not everyone's going to be this grand CEO or a general or the president of the United States. Not everybody can do it. Um, but leadership at, if people were to take on that burden of responsibility at the smallest level, and let's just say with themselves,
Mhm, mhm,
right? And then that builds out because now you're starting to put yourself in order. Then you start to kind of help other people. When I say help, I mean kind of guide other people by planting the right seeds and stuff like that, helping them put themselves in order.
mhm.
Um, and then, together everyone starts to put things into order. And that's like, we look at that and we say that those are the hallmarks of good leaders.
Mhm.
And that cascading event of different things. And sometimes people step away from different areas of leadership and to go lead somewhere else. And that's really powerful. And that, I really liked how you started that way, because even a kid at some level can
Yeah,
lead.
that's right.
Now their scale of leadership is different,
Yeah.
but they can lead, and they
Mhm,
have to learn like taking that and learning how to lead is an important, I think, a very important developmental skill set.
mhm, mhm. I
So
love it. I
I,
love it.
I like how we kind of work together and frame that. So thank you so much.
Yeah.
Uh, well, that is the crown. We'll go ahead and transition to summary, and then we'll go into final words.
Awesome.
Okay, so bro Troy, thanks so much for coming on the Meaning Forge, and I'm just going to kind of summarize the conversation we had here briefly. And we went through a lot of information today. We went through your background, where you come from, some major influences in your life, and almost like different plot lines.
Mm,
And it was awesome to see a lot of them kind of come together in the heat of the Meaning Forge, right? With with the hammer, uh, inspiration from your grandfather, being okay with failure, understanding where you're coming from, dealing with the culture shocks, uh, learning to, and I think this has to be very carefully said, learning to stand and operate within your purpose is also kind of like the same thing as learning to stand and operate uh, in your own skin.
mm,
And we see that very early on, that building of self-confidence. And and as this develops, it starts to really like, it's almost like you plant it, like there's a bunch of seeds being planted, and that's where we start to see the plot lines develop.
right.
Seeds being planted by your grandparents, seed being planted by your church, seeds being planted by your experiences in foreign countries, um in leadership, in leading people. And then as you're like bringing all of these things together, all of these materials in life in a process, uh you start to make yourself like this sword that
Mm,
you carry today. And this sword, while it may not always be perfect, it works, and it's helping you move through the world with a degree of grace
yeah,
and judgment. And when I say judgment, it's looking at how to empower people to be
mhm,
successful, or to pull out the best in them.
sure.
And I love this whole story. I really do. Um, and we kind of talked about, the pen and the pen.
Mm.
The I kind of want to dial in on the Nerf gun dart. Like that is like who's gonna realize that? And imagine the Nerf gun dart that does survive,
Yeah.
right? And that doesn't completely, it's not completely gone away. And what the crazy theories that may have happened about this Nerf gun dart are, but in this moment, it is it is related to, you know to taking risks,
Mm,
and to not being afraid of those things, and to empower people, while also, I would say, even to a point, playing,
mm.
right? And playing
Yeah.
it in the space.
Mhm.
So,
Even that subtle aggressiveness, right? Like
yep,
it's a bullet, right? It goes fast, but it
yep.
still has a subtlety to it, right? It has a
Uh,
softness to it. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly. It's the right kind of force. The right, like, gentle is not necessarily like, let me just be
Weak.
gentle with you. It's the
Right.
right application of force.
Mm.
And so it's been a privilege to have you on and to go through this, and Bro Troy, it's been great. Of course, I highly recommend Bro Code on YouTube, and
Appreciate it.
your efforts here in the Raleigh Durham area. Um, so as we kind of start to close off here, what 3 books do you recommend people read?
Mm. That's a good one, man. Yeah, you got me thinking, man. I'm an audiobook guy.
That's fine too.
I I'm a storytelling guy. So before I go there, I want to add that we were defining leader, or not defining it, but really talking about a little bit more how that plays a part in our lives, right? But I believe that leadership's not defined by the title, but the effort,
Hmm.
right? So to your point, age doesn't define, or the embodiment of the title doesn't define, but your ability to apply action. So
Yeah.
Will Smith just came out with a book called Will, and it tells a little bit more about his story, a little bit more about his adversities. I admire him. He was one of the people, 90s baby, right? I know that, watched him throughout all of that career. So, to be able to, sit in the car, I do spend I do spend a lot of time such. I try to be effective with that. And just listening to him tell his own story is pretty impactful.
Mhm.
Um, so I do like that one. I recently, well, no, we just ordered this one. So what is that book called? Now you're gonna make me look it up. You
That's
messing with
fine.
me here, man. You messing with me here. 50 Cent book. 50 Cent. Boom. Hustle Harder, Hustle Smarter by Curtis Jackson, otherwise known as 50 Cents. Um, I grew up in that G Unit phase, right? I was probably about mid 20s then. Music has always played a huge role in my life, Jim. Music is one of those things that you can reflect on, whether it be memories, times now, to watch these people grow up, to watch these people now have all kind of success, whether that be through music um, or anything else, right? To watch them do that and now have an opportunity to write their story. That, to me, man, that's big. So because I can reflect to that, because I can reflect with the person and what they're doing, I kind of gravitate towards that. And last one, man, I read this one a while back. I'll be honest with you, it still resonates to me now. There's when we talk about music, one of the people that I saw as similar to like a behind the scenes, but was so powerful, is Russell Simmons. So he created Def Comedy Jam, and now this was way back in 2007. I was coming into, I think it was about 2007. Right before my 30s, he wrote a book called Do You, and it talks about accessing the power within yourself. It talks about the laws of attraction. It talks about ways to achieve happiness from the inside out. And it was during one of those times, man, that I was transitioning from, thinking about stopping doing this government work and, living that monogamous lifestyle, going from traveling the world to now being stateside and really trying to figure out a way in building with a wife and kids. And though it was in that moment that book really kind of spoke to me, in that transition that you talk about with coming into your own in leadership, and how to take some of those gifts, talents, and anointings and use that to be selfless rather than selfish, right? Not using it to just gain wisdom and riches for others, but to give, right? To give freely, as we talked about. So those would be the three. Will, 50 Cent's book, and Do You by Russell Simmons.
There we go. So 3 books. by Bro Troy. Well, not by Bro Troy, but Bro
Yeah.
Troy
Soon to come.
recommends.
Yeah.
And hopefully one day he'll write his stuff to put his mind to paper as well.
Mm,
And I think that will be a beautiful book too. Uh, uh, so that being said, I guess a funner question
mm.
is what, who did you cheer for the Super Bowl?
You know what's so funny? You're not gonna believe this, man. Maybe you would. I didn't even watch it.
Oh, even
That
better.
that day we had a episode 24 of the Bro Code, and we had the honor to go to the Fab Lab on North Carolina Central University's campus and interview Professor Eric Saline, who
Nice.
started the Fab Lab and has had a long career in early childhood education, and now
Mm.
gives back. And the Fab Lab is a creative space where kids can create, whether it's T-shirts to 3D images and everything in between. It's a creative space. So anyway, we were during the Super Bowl. That's what we were doing, man. So I didn't even watch
Probably
it.
a better use of time, to be
Yeah,
honest with you. That sounds like that's a better answer than like, oh, it's the Bengals. Well, they
yeah,
lost.
yeah. I'll
Sorry,
be
man.
honest with you, man. One of the things I've talked about with the fellas is in the space that I'm in, man. I've traveled the world. I've had a lot of experiences. I take nothing away from what God has allowed me to do, but right now we call ourselves kings, right? King stands for kind, intelligent, noble, go-getter, and we're in that go-getter space. And I told him, I said, look, next time we watch the Super Bowl, it's going to be on the 50-yard line. Other than that, we need to keep moving. We need to hustle harder and keep moving towards our goal in a spirit of excellence. So, yeah, man,
That's awesome. I like the reframe.
yeah, we didn't even watch it, bro. Like we didn't. We laugh about those things, man. But yeah, we look forward to it. Like all of the things that he talks about the desire of our hearts, man. Like Matthew 6:33, Jim is earlier you said it. It made my heart jump. You were like, man, are you writing on the hearts of these kids? We talk about from a biblical perspective. That's the one that's written on my heart. Like that's the one that I keep on a sticky note in my mirror. That's the one that I keep on my speedometer. That's the one that I remind myself, made a T-shirt out, but seek first. Hashtag but seek first. That's all I need, right? But seek first. All that other stuff, it'll come. But here's the priority. Keep me a priority, man. You'll have all that and some. And
Awesome.
that's held true in my life. So yeah, I would encourage anybody, man, to find one that you really hold on to and work that. Work that.
Nice, nice. And so I guess, as we kind of transition, this is the last question before we'll go to final words and transition. There's a whole transition for that as well. And what is something from this? Did you learn anything from this interview that you can take away?
Mhm.
Or
Um,
something revealed to you?
I've always said that good questions get good answers, and I can honestly say, man, that you did a great job of asking those questions. A conversation is kind of peeling the layers of an onion, and it was really cool to be able to have the opportunity through your blueprint, right, through your rubric, to show those pieces of the puzzle and kind of paint that picture, man. So I truly, from someone that shares in that space of storytelling, from someone that shares in that space of good questions, good answers, man. This was a great experience, man. I truly appreciate it.
But did you learn anything?
Well, I learned that, right? Good questions, good answers. Uh, you know what
I
I
missed
like
that
too? You
then.
know what I really learned too from a creative space? I love the way you break up the segments and
Mm,
and and how you have a reflection on each one of those as you walk through the sword, the pen, the hammer, all of those things. And I think they all correlate and everyone can relate in those spaces in life. So it's not so at first I was wondering, I was like, man, how does that correlate? But you broke that down really well in learning how that correlates into our story and really helped me tell the story a lot easier, man, by just kind of laying those pebbles out.
Hey, I always tell my guests the only thing they need to do is just come with their story ready to go, and
Yeah,
I'll do most of the work because I have to take notes on the side. That's why you see me
yeah.
looking off to the side sometimes. I'm
And
taking notes.
you did that,
Uh,
man. Like I didn't know. I was like, all right. But
so
anyway,
so this is
yeah.
the last question, I promise. Super easy question, and then we'll go straight into final words. What's your favorite symbol? The hammer, the pen, or the hammer, the sword, the pen, or the crown?
Man, you said that one was easy, huh? I would say the pen, man. We always say to the fellas, control your own narrative. No one's gonna tell your story. No one's gonna save you. So you write it. You let people know how you feel, what you like, what you don't like. And we always say you have not because you ask not. So I believe the pen is the opportunity for you to do all of that, to tell your story, wield it in the means by which it is compelling as well as palatable, and controlled. So yeah, I would say the pen.
Awesome.
What's up, good people? It is your boy, Bro Troy, right here from the Bro Coach Show. I am hanging out with my man, honorary bro Jim, and these are my final words. For those that are listening, I ask that you lead in love. Everything else kind of falls in place, but leading in love opens up a space of opportunity for you to learn more about yourself, others, and if nothing else, encourage that P word called perspective. Right now, a lot of people are hurting, a lot of people are suffering, and we all deal with different devils on different levels. So please, love, compassion, perspective, and grace. Right? Grace starts with self. Self-love is not selfish, it's necessary. So those are the four things I want to leave with. If we can create a space where we can live in those words and that thought, that train of thought, and that space of energy more readily and more often, I truly believe that this thing called community, the last part of that word being unity, is actually something that we can work towards, that can be progressive change, taking one step at a time. So that starts with self, man. So make yourself better by living in love, compassion, respecting perspective from others, and giving yourself grace along the way. So please check us out in the work that we do at YM4C at ym4c.org. Give me a call. Love to have a conversation with you at 919-714-9905. And if you want to support a nonprofit here in the Raleigh-Durham area that's doing great work serving underserved youth from ages 7 to 17, sharing the love of Christ through creative workshops as well as sports, reach out to YM4C, ym4c.org. Give me a call. Go on our website, go to Instagram, go to Facebook, tap in, learn more about how you can be a supporter as well as give time, money, and volunteer. And don't forget to support this podcast. It's your boy, Bro Troy, and love to love, man. Be safe. Peace.